Hey everyone, my name is Justin, and this is the Nintendo Switch 2. It's been a long time coming for this console, 8 whole years, but it's finally in our hands, and I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about it. We have a much smaller, compact package this time around. Looking around the outside of the box, we have a bunch of nice shots of the console, and obviously the huge Switch 2 logo, letting us know that we do indeed have the new console. There's no seal on the box, so we're just going to open it up right here, and the first thing we see is the console and our new Joy-Con 2 controllers. Immediately, I'm just shocked at how big this thing is. Like, the length of the console takes up the whole length of the box, which is crazy to me. Taking a look at what's under this top tray, we have our Joy-Con 2 grip, which now has its edges shaved off for the new magnetic design of the Joy-Cons. We also have our Nintendo-branded power brick and USB-C cable. This brick does 60 watts with power delivery compliance, so it's pretty fast and can totally charge some of your other devices as well at the appropriate wattage. And obviously, we've got our dock down here as well to connect to a TV. I really like this new design, especially compared to the dock from the Switch 1. Other than the fact that it's bigger, the opening at the top is definitely a lot wider, so hopefully less scraping as you dock the console. And I just like the nice rounded corners and edges on this new one. Now that's everything we've got here at the bottom, so I'll bring the tray back and we'll take out the Joy-Con 2s first, which you'll immediately notice are much bigger than the original Joy-Cons, but we'll talk more in depth about the design later on. Taking our console out, obviously we have our super nice, expansive 7.9-inch display. Under the console and the tray, you'll find some health and safety information, an ultra-high-speed HDMI cable, and both our Joy-Con 2 wrist straps. These straps also double as mouse skates for the Joy-Con 2s, so they'll glide better with the straps on. And that's everything in the box. I also have here a physical copy of Mario Kart World as well, so let's open this up too. And as always for Nintendo, we have a huge game case for a tiny cartridge. Other than the fact that the cartridges are now red, they also have faster read speeds and can go up to 64 gigs in capacity for larger games like Cyberpunk 2077, for example. And now, bringing back the console, let's boot it up for the first time. These speakers sound really good, especially coming from the original Switch back in 2017. And now, with our unboxing out the way, let's talk about the design of the Switch 2. The first thing I'm noticing is that this console just feels a lot sturdier and premium compared to Switch 1. After 8 years, Nintendo's had time to really work on making this console feel a lot more substantial, and I'm definitely feeling that here. It's still made of plastic all around, but the newer matte finish helps make the console feel a lot nicer to hold. And if you're into the minor details, you'll see here that, up close, the plastic on the Joy-Con 2s and on the console itself is covered in these tiny white speckles to add some nice texture to the look. The controller's attached magnetically to the sides as opposed to having to slide off and on, and the whole unit feels a lot sturdier because of this. In the previous generation, there was a little bit of wiggle possible when both Joy-Cons were attached, but now with this new magnetic design where the Joy-Con 2s sit within a little divot in the side of the console, the whole unit feels a lot more sturdy. There's no give here as I bend my wrists around. Both consoles are the same thickness, but the Switch 2 feels a little thinner when I'm holding it just because of how much bigger it is and how much more volume of the console is spread throughout my hands. Obviously, we have a much bigger screen here. As I mentioned, it's 7.9 inches diagonally, and it's also 1080p now at 120 frames per second with a variable refresh rate, which for games is going to be really noticeable. Now, whether or not you'll see 120Hz all the time while playing games on your Switch 2 is a different story, but with VRR, games that don't support 120 frames per second will still look smooth without tearing and such. Comparing this to the Switch 1 here, you're going to see just how much bigger the display on the Switch 2 is. This is going to translate to so much nicer of a viewing experience when playing in handheld mode or when sharing the screen in tabletop mode. Since the console's bigger now, it also feels a lot nicer and more ergonomic to hold in the hand. Compared to the original Switch, it almost felt like a toy sometimes with how small it was, so I am really liking the bigger size here. If you're worried about having small hands and not being able to use the console properly though, don't worry. The Joy-Con 2s have their bumpers and triggers actually wrap a lot farther down the corner of the controller, so you don't need to stretch your fingers out really far to reach them. You can see here, compared to the original Joy-Con, the bumper and trigger wrap all the way around to the sides of the Joy-Con 2, and they feel just as accurate and precise being pressed from the side as from the top. So no compromises there. Since the Joy-Con 2s themselves are bigger, obviously our buttons and sticks get bigger as well. They both feel improved compared to the original Joy-Cons, and again, less toy-like. The buttons are a little softer, but still not as nice as the ones on the Pro Controller, and the stick feels smoother and travels maybe a tiny bit more than the ones in the original Joy-Cons. And they have much clearer, stronger vibration now, which I can already feel even just taking them off the console and feeling the haptic that plays when they connect wirelessly. To detach the Joy-Con 2s, there's a release button that you press on the back of them that moves a pin that pushes the Joy-Con 2s off the side of the console. Then you just pull them off to remove them. You can see here, if you press on the button lightly but don't pull, the controllers pop off and snap back on rather than just falling off entirely, so you don't have to worry about accidental triggering. Now, looking more into the design of the console itself, on the back we have the logo and the kickstand, which is obviously a huge upgrade over the Switch 1. There's lots of freedom to adjust it, so you can go from upright to nearly flat. I will say the thinness of it means that it does flex quite a bit if you only push it from one side. Otherwise, the kickstand hinge feels nicely stiff, so it's not going to fall over like the Switch 1 tended to do. On the top, we've got our power and volume buttons, second USB-C port, headphone jack, and our game cartridge slot. The USB-C port on the top here is new for Switch 2, so you can charge while in tabletop mode where the bottom port is blocked off. You can also connect a webcam to the top port for Nintendo's game chat service, as well as other games that use a camera, but the top port doesn't support docking, so unfortunately it won't transmit video if you try and plug the Switch 2 into a TV from the top. Looking at the game card slot, it looks like they made it a lot more heavy-duty this time around, which is a welcome addition because the cover for the cartridge slot on the Switch 1 felt a little scarily flimsy at times. On the bottom edge, we have our speakers and the USB-C port that can dock the system. Now, using the console so far has been a really nice experience. The 120Hz display is super smooth, and the LCD is really bright and vibrant, especially compared to the Switch 1. When you dock the system, your video goes straight to the TV at up to 4K 60 frames per second, and HDR if your TV supports it. Most of the UI does remain the same as the Switch 1, with the most noticeable differences being in the sound effects, the color of the select ring, and the rounded corners. And even after 8 years, we are still stuck with just plain white and black themes. The C button launches this menu where you can invite others into game chat, but I honestly don't think that I'll use this at all. Not only will it be subscription locked next year, but also platforms like Discord are just fine. This feature doesn't seem necessary to me or even worth the cost, but I'm sure it'll be helpful to some users who might not have other platforms like Discord. Personally, one of my favorite new features on Switch 2 is this option here in settings to charge only up to 90% battery. Knowing that my console is going to sit charging in the dock whenever I'm not using it, I don't want to have my battery continuously at 100% charge, which can reduce its health over time. So with this feature, the console will charge only up to about 90%, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, so that you can get a little more usable life out of your battery before it needs to be replaced. Now, the mouse mode feature has a built-in tutorial here in the controller options menu. So we can go through that, and the mouse controls just work whenever you're in the OS. So I can just start using the stick, and then put the controller down and start mousing around, and it'll switch over right away. Then, when I'm done using mouse controls, I can just push any stick, and we're back to selecting things using the joysticks. Alright, let's test out some games. We're going to start here with Mario Kart World. So I'm going to insert our new game card, and there it is. Now, trying out the game for the first time, it's running great, especially since we're in handheld mode with a smaller screen. Visuals look really crisp, colors look vibrant, and the frame rate looks super smooth. Here's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 edition running on the console. I've genuinely never seen this game run so smoothly and look so crisp and clear. This is a really nice experience, and I'm so glad I'll get to beat the game for the first time with visuals like this. And just for the fun of it, here's Animal Crossing New Horizons running on the Switch 2. I transferred my island over and opened up the game only to realize that it's capped at 30 frames per second still, which was a little disappointing. It is showing in HDR now, so we'll get brighter visuals and more vibrant colors, but I'm still a little disappointed that the game isn't taking full advantage of all the extra power. Load times, which were super slow on the Switch 1, are definitely faster now, so at least we're saving time in that regard. And finally, I want to demo the new Game Share feature. With supported games in Game Share, you can host a multiplayer game on your Switch 2 while your friends play from their own consoles. You can do this both via local communication or over the internet through Game Chat. Here I have Super Mario Odyssey running on my Switch 2, and I started a Game Share session via local communication, which I joined with a Switch 1. Game Share works by sending a live video feed straight to the consoles receiving the game so that others can play with their own controllers and their own points of view. You can see here when you enable Game Share that the game kind of shrinks a little, but that leaves room in the borders to show the game title, the people in the Game Share session, as well as the signal strength. I honestly didn't have high hopes for this feature, but it is actually pretty cool. The video feed being received by the Switch 1 is at 60 frames per second, albeit not in full resolution at all, and controls are super responsive and work with little to no latency. Audio is also sent over to the connected consoles too, and it's very much in sync. There's little to no latency between the two systems in that regard either. Overall, I think this is a really cool feature, and I'm excited to see what other games will get support for it in the future. That's all I've got for you so far with the Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo has done a really good job here, taking the successes of their Switch 1 and making upgrades to the places that needed them the most, while still sprinkling some nice gimmicks on top, like Game Chat and Game Share. If there's anything you'd like me to cover in a later video on the Switch 2, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.